who's a local author, a nature lover, ecologist, and he's going to present a talk based on his book, Nature's Pathways to Mindfulness. In this book, John explores a bevy of gateways into mindfulness for a wide range of readers and shows why contact with nature can restore health and is vital for our continued physical and probably and maybe mostly mental well-being. So, John.
Thanks, Beth. Well, good morning, and it's so nice to be here with all of you. The sun is shining, and I saw some geese flying north.
Oh, yeah.
To add to that, but no red wings.
Oh, yeah, that was a treat.
Well, let me see now if I can have any luck getting my power knocked up.
Sharon?
We can't hear anything.
Okay,
In
well,
here.
I'm not saying anything.
Okay.
He's looking for.
Okay, we can't see. Oh. I don't know how to get everybody off so that he's on the main screen. I have everything on. What do I do to get rid of everybody else but John Harvey? How do I do that?
He's gonna share his screen.
Okay,
Tap the
Okay.
little,
If you
yeah,
do
tap the tic-tac-toe thing.
and view speaker, you can change your view to speaker.
okay, I'm good. I'm good. I didn't want to disturb you. I just couldn't hear and can't get rid of myself. Okay.
John, are you trying to open PowerPoint or?
Yeah, I've
share?
got it open on my screen.
Oh, we need to share screen.
There's that. I thought I have it. Let me go back. Zero meeting. And then.
So folks, nobody's talking yet.
Right.
Not yet.
Don't get worried. Oh, after it's well, whatever. Okay. Oh, okay, yeah, I asked in the morning anyway, so, but I will ask again. I don't know. It was right after, said we were. Yeah, that's okay. Oh. It's good one I saw. Oh.
I need to.
Share? No, you find you, help with please. If you put down there, scroll down.
Probably never heard it just became.
Okay.
There we go. Very good. Pretty simple.
So John Harvey has started screen sharing.
Getting close.
Um,
How did it be?
you know, start it.
Okay.
View. There you got it.
Okay, looks good. Well, I grew up in Racine, Wisconsin. And as a kid, I attended the Olympia Brown Unitarian Church. And I remember as a kid listening to the morning readings when my parents dragged me off to services there. And I had this kind of interesting reaction. I had this idea that all morning readings should be like some passage from the Bible. But at that church, the morning readings included selections from the Bhagavad Gita, from the Vedas, and from Thoreau. And there I was 11 years old, sitting in a Unitarian church, listening to the spiritual connections and meaning of nature. And here I am, I don't want to say how many years later, talking about nature. And I'm going to talk about the physical benefits and the emotional and cognitive benefits, but in particular, how it can facilitate our spiritual and personal growth and development. So for me, there's a nice feeling of some kind of circles looping around here. So it's really meaningful for me to be here with all of you this morning. So this is the book that I turn this on, that I wrote, and I did promise to get you out of here before 7 o'clock tonight, so I'm not going to cover all of these topics in depth. But I'll give you just a little background about why this book, Pathways to Nature Mindfulness, arose. And it kind of started with my first book, which was a kind of a personal story of a year that I spent connecting with nature. I made this commitment. I'm the kind of person who likes to set some goals. So I set this goal to go to the forest for an hour once a week for a full year. And it was actually, I don't know how that sounds to you or not. It was kind of hard, particularly at first. Trying to get myself organized to get out the door. It seemed like it was 10 o'clock or 10:30 before I got out there. I was worried that I'd be bored sitting in the woods. So I took a couple books along, for some reading. But I will say it became much, much easier. And I quickly discovered that it was the best hour of my week. And so I would be soon getting out there before sunrise or sunset and had all these wonderful experiences. And I kept a journal and I wrote this book, The Stillness of the Living Forest, which kind of is a journal of all 52 weeks through the seasons. Now, at the end of it, and by the way, you might look at that picture and notice a little reaction. And I'm going to go back to this picture again, because one of the beautiful things about nature is that it works on you positively, whether you purposefully engage in it or not. There are things in that picture that even for a 10-second exposure will have a little bit of a beneficial effect. What I found at the end of my year was that I felt pretty different. I physically felt really relaxed and rejuvenated, more positive, more grateful, thought my mind was working better, and had these feelings of being kind of connected and part of something greater. And I had a kind of a nature reset. I talk about it as the birds in the parking lot effect, something about sitting and listening to birds and learning them and registering that information. I became sensitized. So now if I go to Walmart, and I usually park way out at the end, so I get some steps in, and I'm walking through the parking lot, probably like most of you, I'm thinking about what I need to buy and what I'm going to do when I get home. And all of a sudden, I hear some little house sparrows chirping, catches my attention. I'm tuned into it. And it's kind of uplifting. I pause, I look up, I see the seagulls. Now I know they're out there looking for French fries, but still, they're beautiful when they're flying. So it's kind of like this sensitivity to nature cultivated through that year has changed some things in me. And I notice these things, these events around me, nature around me, and I feel uplifted and a kind of a shift. Now, as is common, I kind of discounted my experience. And I thought, this is just a one-off thing. I was fortunate to have the time. I was kind of semi-retired, so I had less work stress. And I knew that it was always good to be in nature. That's where I sat out at Prompton Lake and the little stool that I took out. And that's a big black cherry tree that I sat on after I worked and found place. Then I was walking around in the bookstore, bam, just looking through books, and I came across this book called The Nature Fix. And Florence Williams, wonderful writer, talked all about the science of beneficial effects of nature. And it was like a realization. It was all of a sudden, hey, John, what you experienced out there wasn't just a one-off accidental thing. There's some real science there. And this percolated for a while and then kind of tuned me into, just an example, the science is incredible. So in 2022, this woman from the University of Tokyo reviewed 381 studies from 62 countries around the world on the beneficial effects of time and nature. She identified 227 distinct pathways through which nature affects human well-being. And you can see that includes physical health, mental health, sense of identity, intuitive, spiritual, social connection, and more. So I came up with a new mission. I wanted to dive into this research, understand it, answer some questions that I had, and connect it with my experience. And after a couple of years and a lot of work, it resulted in the next book. And one of my questions was, what are exactly the benefits from time and nature on human well-being? And let me just do a brief definition. What do we mean by nature? Essentially, what's non-human. So, or non-person made. So it's all the animals, plants, other things in the world that aren't made by people, all the events and processes that aren't caused by people. By the way, during that year, I had to fit my weekend when I was traveling. This is called Finch Pond, and it's located in northern Germany. I was over there visiting my daughter, and I had to sneak off from the place where we were camping, and it was kind of lovely sitting by this little pond. And time, just we're talking about time and nature. The good news here is that almost any amount of time in nature is beneficial. That means literal seconds. They do these experiments where they flash pictures on for a few seconds and they can measure effects. All the way up to 3 days in nature. Generally speaking, if you spend 10 to 20 minutes out in nature, you really start to accrue these benefits. Longer intervals may be better. There is something about, you don't have to do anything special, just get out in nature and you get the effects. But there is, I think, something important about what you do with your awareness and attention when you're out in nature that can deepen the effects. So, what are the physical benefits of spending time in nature? Here's a visual of the cardiovascular benefits, and spending time in nature decreases blood pressure, lowers heart rate, improves respiration, and interestingly, improves something called heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is when your heart rate responds sensitively to little ups and downs in your life. And normally, if you're locked into a stress mode, your heart rate stays elevated or it can stay repressed. So the ideal thing is to have this beautiful ongoing responsiveness to the world around you. One of the big things in psychotherapy now is something called vagal therapy, which has to do with the vagus nerve, which is part of the autonomic nervous system, which regulates all kinds of internal functions. And essentially, one branch, the sympathetic branch, that's the one in blue, its job is to activate internally through all of those organs the fight or flight response. And the parasympathetic branch, that's in red, its job is to activate the rest and digest system. So you get decreased fight or flight, and increased rest and digest. Full body response from spending time in nature. Plus, you get a decrease in muscular tension, breathing, fewer stress hormones, less blood flow to the kind of focus area of the brain. And what else do we know? People who spend more time in nature, lower body mass, less disease, better immune system, better antiviral cells, reduced obesity, improved sleep, increased healing, and lower mortality. Now, and a lot of this research hasn't come from our country, but it's really come from Japan, where they have conducted forest bathing. They've conducted it in a structured way so that they're able to do this research and verify these results. And I talked about this already. Now, why and how does nature create such benefits? Well, one of the key studies here, and I hope you forgive me for being a little bit academic. I just can't shed that part of my identity. A guy named Robert Ulrich in 1980 did a really interesting study. And he thought that nature really helped to address prolonged stress response. He felt that time in nature, seeing, hearing, feeling, and inhaling fragrances de-escalated that fight or flight response. Now, he did a really unique experiment here. There's two views. And what he did was he had patients post gallbladder surgery. And he matched them on all possible variables, and he put half of them in a room where they had a view of a brick wall, and he put the other half in a room where they had a view of a row of trees. And then they collected data. And what they found was, remember, nobody was told anything, nobody was told to look out the window, none of this. Then you looked at the data afterwards, and the people who had the view of nature had shorter hospital stays. They needed less pain medication. They had fewer post-op complications. And something that made the nurses really happy is they had fewer negative complaints. So a simple intervention like that, just this view of nature, really had some powerful effects. Now I'm going to put together a little structure here and talk about these benefits, but the physical benefits, maybe we can explain those through this stress management. What about benefits to mood and emotions from time in nature? Okay, here's another experiment. You're going to go on a walk for 17 minutes. Half of you is going to go on this path through the woods along a canal in Ottawa, Canada. And the other half, this is on a college campus, because it's cold up there. They've got tunnels going from one end of campus to the other. So half of you get to walk through a tunnel from one end of campus to the other. Well, what do you think the results are? The nature trail walkers, and remember, they're very tricky with these experiments. They didn't tell them anything at all about tune into nature or breathe or do any of this stuff. They gave them some hokey instructions about, be observant because you might be a guide for guests or something like that. Well, the trail walkers, they had increased positive affect. By that, we mean all the realm of positive emotions. They felt more relaxed. They had a sense of soft fascination, and they had a stronger feeling of connection to nature. Now, when we look at all of the research on time in nature, on emotions, the first thing that shows up is you get a big reduction in the negatives: anxiety, worry, depression, pessimism, sadness, anger, hostility, all of those. At the same time, once you tune down the negatives, then you get an increase in the positives: happiness, calmness, tranquility, gratitude, compassion, empathy, feelings of resilience. And this is all real interesting because there's a new and emerging branch of psychology called positive psychology, which says, you know, you can spend a lifetime trying to unwind all of the trauma and negatives, and that they can be painful and really slowly productive, but it's also almost more efficient to accentuate the positives. And so these nature connections where you experience awe, joy, rapture, thankfulness, and wonder build up all of these positive emotions and replace or override the negative emotions. Most of these pictures are ones that I took myself. So that's a view. I was out in Colorado for a week, and that's the Rockies. And I was glad I got up to the mountaintop to get that view. I did get lost on the way down. But that's not included in this picture.
But you're here.
Yeah. Now, how do we explain, or what is the theory that can explain these positive emotional benefits of nature? And one of the things that comes out is what's called biophilia, or love of nature. And the idea is that it's just core to our evolution. Nature generously provided us the environment, the tools, the sustenance, the shelter to evolve and to grow. And so we have a positive connection to those environments. We evolved in nurturing nature. Nature is our true home. You know, just about everybody loves to go to the beach, loves to go in the woods, or to sit out in their backyard. Nobody has to teach you these things. And so the idea is we get out in nature, we kind of reconnect with this natural love for nature. Our aesthetic sensibilities have kind of evolved to tune in to certain aspects of nature. So that's the second group. Emotional benefits explained by biophilia. What about the cognitive benefits? Because all of the research shows that people who spend time in nature have better attention, better memory, better problem solving, executive function, processing speed, and very interesting, better creativity. They see connections, they think outside the box. And the key thing here seems to be tension. And it's not just the duration and intensity of attention, it's really the quality of attention. We have two attentional systems. One is the one that most of us have learned to use. It's called voluntary attention. This is directed by cognitive control processes. It's called focus. This is called buckle down, pay attention, and get to work. Which is something I had to learn when I first went to first grade. I grew up in the country. There was no kindergarten. I started off in first grade, and I had spent the first 6 years of my life wandering around in the fields in the country and playing outside. And I remember very clearly sitting there in our country school. There was one room, 4 grades, big windows that you looked out, and there was a field next door where a farmer was raising cabbages. And I remember looking out and kind of looking at the rows and seeing the farmer working and wondering, you know, when they were going to harvest them. And I heard this voice, John, pay attention, pointing to the alphabet. So that's kind of a model for the kind of attention that you need to work and survive in life. The problem with that thinking is that to focus on the letters on the blackboard, I had to tune out to everything else. That takes effort and that takes work. And that's why people go to work and they focus and they start to feel tired around 10:30, so they go and get a double espresso. And then they're worn out at the end of the day, so they need their happy hour drink to kind of relax so that they can get up the next day. So it's a real, it's a treadmill. Now, this kind of voluntary attention, we need it, but what happens is we get locked into it. It takes a lot of effort. Involuntary attention is kind of where you drift into a reverie. And this often happens when you're sitting outside in nature. You kind of drift off, but you start to notice things and memories come up and you find solutions. Many of the greatest thinkers and philosophers and scientists in the world went for walks to process their thinking. Kant, Rousseau, Nietzsche, all of these guys, whether you like their philosophy or not, this is still important to them. So involuntary attention, nonlinear, sensory rich, associative, and this is why you get the enhanced creativity. We really need both. We need to be able to shift flexibly. And the Kaplans, they feel that being in nature cultivates soft fascination. Here's that picture again that I love so much. That's looking across Prompton Lake, just outside of Homestead. Something about the vistas, colors, shapes, sounds, sensations, even the smells of nature provide the just right amount of change and interest to shift to the restoring and refreshing soft fascination, involuntary attention. So now we got one more loop: cognitive benefits, tension, restoration therapy. But there is still a big question that I have, and that is, what about these higher level benefits? Because if you read the research on time and nature, you keep hearing these things about a feeling of connection to something, feeling grounded, integrated, spiritually uplifting, transcendent, having personal insights, intuitive, self-knowledge, what people call nature relatedness. In that review, where they identify the 227 pathways, two of those pathways I really like. One was intuitive, experiences and feelings of a spiritual and religious nature by interacting with nature, and transcendentive. Boy, if there is a word that's made for a UU congregation, transcendentive is it. So something about benefits beyond the physical realm, connection to something greater, connection to all things in the universe. Well, all of this stuff kind of created a personal dilemma for me, because on one hand, I had the scientific background as an academically trained psychologist. I want hard data. All of these things are very subjective. And let me say, you can measure attention, mood, and physical stuff really easily. These transcendentive benefits are much trickier to measure because they're very subjective. On the other hand, all of this stuff really aligned with my personal experiences. How many times when I was sitting in the forest did I feel connected with the greater breath of the wind and the leaves, connected to the cycles? How many times did I have experiences where I absorbed the resilience, vitality, growth, and adaptability of nature? So I thought, well, let me study what happens when you sit for an hour. And that's in my backyard. That's an Aldo Leopold bench, kind of a modified version, but it's a nice way to be able to sit out and enjoy nature. Well, what happened for me is usually after 30 or 40 minutes, there was kind of a tipping point where my mind stilled. I became more present-centered, open. I kind of shifted into that involuntary tension. So stress reduction, biophilia, soft fascination, but there's something more going on. And that something registered to me as mindfulness. John Kabat-Zinn, kind of the leader of integrating mindfulness into contemporary stress management, he defines it as awareness cultivated by paying attention in a sustained, particular way on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmental. That's a short but very meaningful, packed definition. So this kind of resolved my dilemma. Mindfulness is a science, well documented, but mindfulness really is a method for personal growth and spiritual transformation. It combines bare attention, which is being in the present, and then clear comprehension, really being able to see connections outside and inside. Nature mindfulness, and that's North Carolina, a sunrise over the Atlantic Ocean. Mindfulness methods include body awareness, body scan, and sensory awareness. And it's really sensory awareness that works in nature, where you focus your attention on sights, sounds, sensations, and smells, and you kind of fits very well with time and nature. So now we kind of have all of these things together. It's a little hard to separate them, but when you're spending time in nature, you're kind of in that middle zone where all of these things intersect and you're getting all of these benefits. Now, if you just, oh,
You're okay.
I'm okay?
Sure.
All right.
Not 7 o'clock yet.
Okay. All right. Good. Buckle up. We only have 6 hours to go. So how much time in nature do you need? Well, there's some things called look to the green, which means if you take a little break and you go outside and you look up at the trees, well, they're not green right now, but the sky is blue and you feel the air and the breeze, even photographs of nature. Research shows that there's significant physical and mood effects within seconds. So anything helps, any amount of time. Now, some folks up at Cornell, they did a whole review and they found that as little as 10 to 20 minutes daily, up to 50 minutes sitting, walking in a diverse array of natural settings has significant positive impacts on psychological and physiological markers. That's not that much when you start to think about the benefits to fit that into your daily time budget. Here's a heck of a study. A guy in England, University of Exeter, 20,000 subjects. That's a pretty good number of subjects. And what they find is that people who spent 120 minutes a week had better health and higher levels of well-being. Nature areas, parks, it didn't really matter where it was, just that they were kind of getting out there. In Finland, Lisa Travanian, she looked at urban dwellers and she found the greatest improvements in feelings of restoration, vitality. All of these positive came with people who spent 5 hours a month in nature. That sounds manageable, doesn't it? Yeah, I mean, it sounds doable. And then at the other end, one of the key researchers in this area, David Strayer, he talks about his really important experiences doing these 3-day backpacking trips, where he really loses himself in nature. So day 1 was letting go of all the urban impressions, the inner noise. Day 2, you tune into nature. And day 3 was where he really shifted to that involuntary attention to a new reality. And as a scientist, he's the one who measured the improvement in creativity and really found changes in brainwave patterns that persist for up to 30 days after spending the 3 days in nature.
Oh.
Hey, anybody remember the food pyramid? Okay, well, here's the time and nature pyramid. So you got choices. Get your 30 to 60 seconds in, try to get out daily. Maybe it adds up to 5 hours a month in nature. And then maybe once a year, you do some kind of an intensive. Well, I think there's levels of effects. If you get your 10 minutes, if you do these little breaks, you hold back the bad effects. If you do 5 hours a month, you're accumulating the positive. But I think if you do really intense experiences, you have the chance to change your baseline sensitivity and really create some deep effects. Now, how can mindfulness enhance the effects of time in nature? Here's a guy in Finland. Isn't this fascinating? All this stuff going on all around the world. So this researcher, Kavali Korpela, he thought, well, let me help people. I'm going to design what he called power trails. So he has like a 30-minute walk through a park, and he's got signs along the way. And the idea is, remember, you don't have to do anything. You just take a walk in nature, and you'll get the restorative beneficial effects. But what he was trying to do was create more mindfulness to deepen those effects, to get more bang for your buck in a way when you're spending time in nature. So he's got 3 kinds of signs. The first set of signs are relax and observe. So you're walking through, and I think I got that picture. That's the woods in Finland. I thought, well, let's be authentic here. So look around and breathe, just kind of tune in. The second set of signs is find a favorite view to hold in memory. So now kind of try to deeply connect. And then the third set of signs are more reflection and insight. Find something in nature that represents your current life situation. So you kind of do that grounding, connecting, growing. Very interesting and very easy to do and potentially beneficial. This woman, Holly Merker, I've never met her in person, but we've communicated. She's a lovely person. She developed something called ornithotherapy, which is really using the pathway of watching birds to become mindful in nature. And she says, birds are all around us. They're interesting, fascinating. So she's got 15 to 20-minute sessions of bird watching in your yard, park, and nature. And she has in her book kind of mindfulness-based explorations, different things to notice, to tune you in, to get more of these benefits, and guided meditations, maybe listening. And the thing about Holly is this wasn't some academic exercise. This was personal because she had a really nasty form of breast cancer, and she used this methodology of connecting with nature to facilitate her healing. Now, the most famous and well-known system of connecting with nature is called forest bathing. What's really interesting about forest bathing is that it has a structure, and so it can be replicated, and it has guides, so it makes it kind of accessible for people to get help entering into nature. And it has stages. These stages, what was interesting to me is that I kind of accidentally came upon a lot of these stages in my own year of forest stillness. So one is intention. I would form the intention, I'm going out into the woods. Forming an intention is really powerful. I'm going out to spend some time in nature. A threshold of connection. When I went to my spot in the woods, I walked over what's called a seep, where a little spring came out of a stone wall and flowed downhill. And even in the dead of winter, there was green. And it was a little wet. And I always felt like when I crossed that seep that I was entering into a nature connection zone. Embodied awareness really has to do then with cultivating sensory awareness, walking slowly. Now I do sit spots now, but I also really like to do what I call wander walks or slow walks where you tune into nature. And it's shifting to that involuntary attention. incorporating invitations, what they call invitations, and what happens if you sit long enough and you tune in and you become mindful, there's some aspect of nature that will really resonate with where you are. It's almost like a perfect psychotherapeutic moment of insight. And those happen spontaneously. They have sit spots, sitting for 20 minutes, noticing, tea ceremony. So it's almost, and I did this thing when I went out for a morning and I sat for an hour. Somehow I would come home and make a good hearty breakfast. And I wonder, well, why is that so important to me? I think it's a way to take what's abstract and through the ritual of dining, eating, incorporate it, make it more. And then at the end, you kind of consider the gifts of knowledge and insight that you receive. Now, my method for being in nature is what I call sit spot. Comes from John Young, comes from this book, which really helped. And sit spot basics. You just pick a nice spot in nature, sit for an hour, do 10-minute intervals, engage in full sensory awareness, jot down your impressions. John Young was big talking about this 40-minute tipping point. It's the time where the disturbances that you've created disappear and where you finally settle down so that you're open to the environment. And I kept I would make little circles and note everything. Every 10 minutes was kind of like a refresh, and interesting things happen. So common elements for nature mindfulness: intention, threshold in, present centeredness, sensory awareness, really important, being open to invitations, threshold out, consolidation, processing. That's Cape Lookout down near Harper's Island, North. So I'm going to take maybe 5 more minutes of your time. Okay. So just a little bit more important stuff to talk about. And that is, when you're doing these nature mindfulness experiences, there are certain gateways. And the gateways, these are the things that work consciously or unconsciously, without awareness or with awareness. But sensory pathways are really the key. Now, when you sit in nature, what you're going to find is that your hearing, which is active 360 degrees around you, can become your most valuable sense. And sooner or later, you'll tune into what's called the golden trifecta of nature sounds: wind, water, and birds. The wind, I mean, one of the greatest experiences for me is, usually the wind, I notice it when I'm going from my house to the car or I'm out in the yard. It's either interfering or helping. But when you sit and listen to the wind, it's like music. Every tree has its own song. The wind rises and fades. Water babbles, burbles, gurgles, splashes, whoops, roars. It's music. And of course, one of the favorites is bird song. I mean, I was kind of a bird watcher before I started this, but I really got into it and learned it. And, Native Americans say that bird songs are a gift. They're a reminder of the spiritual realm. And they give us ongoing information about what's going on in nature. And the thing about bird songs is, the more you learn, the more you enjoy them. I mean, I know, not an expert, but I know quite a few bird songs, and I can't tell you how excited I am to hear that first yellow warbler. That'll be sometime in late April. Sweet, sweet, a little more sweet. It's a beautiful song. It comes every year. I enjoy it more every year. Seeing, it's our go-to sense. It helps us shift to soft fascination. Now, in nature, here's this picture again, because it has all the elements: greens, blues, and purples. We like those. We like rounded shapes. We like an open vista. We like something that looks healthy and vital. And we like fractals. Fractals are visual patterns that repeat at increasingly finer levels. Looking at fractals creates immediate brain changes in areas regulating emotions. They're like visual symphonies. Here's a great picture of fractals. You see how the tree goes from trunks to branches out to twigs. The same pattern is repeated at ever finer levels. And actually, internally, our circulation system, our brain, and our lungs are organized in the same way. So it's kind of like a resonance. When we view fractals, we're kind of looking at our own structure. Don't forget to inhale scent of nature. Anybody here like walking through a pine forest? Or junipers? Well, what the research has found is inhaling those pine aromas creates an immediate boost in your immune system that lasts for days. So nature is filled with aromas. Our sense of smell is a little dull, but you'd be surprised you can reawaken it, just the way you can reawaken your sense of hearing. The healthy fragrances of nature are called phytoncides. In Korea, they've actually developed pathways with junipers planted so that people can walk down there and inhale that and really boost their well-being. And touch, when you're sitting there, the skin is your largest sensory organ. There's nothing that feels better than catching the first rays of the sun when you're out there at daybreak. The feel of the wind, the quality of the air. And, you know, if there's some wild blueberries or wild raspberries or wild strawberries, maybe give them a taste. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. Got other stuff, which is talks about nature mindfulness, and I've got other things, information on more specific guidance about how to do a sit spot. One of the wonderful things, when I was writing this book, I realized that I needed some victims. I needed to take some people out for sit spots to see how it worked for them. And Pat was one of my victims. And what I found was that people quickly take the sit spot experience and mold it to their own individuality. And that's the way it should be. So it worked out pretty well. So that's the spiel on the benefits of time and nature. I hope I've done credit to Thoreau, and I hope I've done credit to my home UU Church for bringing this circle around about the benefits of spending time in nature. Does anybody have any questions? Is there anything? Yes.
First of all, I read your first book.
Oh.
I loved it. I should read it again.
Okay.
Secondly, I also learned a lot today. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna think about it. I have one question, and that is, isn't there a contradiction between involuntary attention and mindfulness practice?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I think what happens there is that mindfulness is really using an object of focus. One of those is the sensory awareness to break down that top-down voluntary attention and open up the mind to get insight. So they sound a little contradictory, but it's kind of because we might be coming at mindfulness thinking that it's another version of top-down thinking, that it's a disciplined focus. And really, what mindfulness is a gateway to shedding the top-down attention and working more with a spontaneous, open awareness.
So that
Yeah.
theoretically then, mindfulness is a tool which, if it works, must disappear to become involuntary.
Yeah, you kind of, it's a door, it's a gateway, and then you get into this zone.
And you don't need it.
Well, no, but on the other hand, uh, you do need it because practicing it strengthens that gate.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Good question. I'm gonna incorporate that in. Yeah. Great. Any other questions?
I have one over here on the Zoom.
Okay.
So I saw in one of your slides that it said awe. And I was very interested and I read a lot about awe because I thought I would write a paper on it. And you might be able to answer this question, but when people feel awe, it decreases their feelings of importance as the only important thing in nature. We're only a small part of nature. There's nature everywhere and all around us. So the fact that it decreases your egocentricity, it seems to make you, it's conceivable that it makes you more open to the world and less, maybe more happy because you can embrace other things and not feel that you're so important in the world when you feel that. So I was wondering why, I think it said awe and mindfulness, but we didn't discuss the awe part, but there is a whole, I think, study and theory about the feelings of awe. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, I mean, that whole field of positive psychology, experiences of awe are really important. And I think there's a great feeling of relief that comes when you feel absorbed into big nature and little you kind of disappears in a way. It's a big burden to constantly be defending and promoting this egocentric sense. And somehow, almost paradoxically, yeah, when you enter into moments of awe, you feel less, but you feel more. You feel less egocentric, but more part of something greater, which gives you a kind of a sense of strength and resilience and adaptability. So when you sit in moments of mindfulness in nature, and you shift to that involuntary attention, I think you can find awe in the tiniest little things. I remember sitting in the woods, and after about 40 minutes, I was looking all around, looking up, listening. All of a sudden, I looked down at about a square foot of forest floor, and there was a whole world of life in that 1 foot. So the tiniest little thing, and it gave me such a feeling of awe. There was even some little moles running across my boot there, but they were kind of cute and harmless. And there were so many different plants and ferns and so much process going on.
I want to share one little story of awe that I have. Last year sometime, one white Peking jumbo duck was on the river across from my house. And I said, oh my gosh, somebody threw that duck in. That's not a wild duck, that's a farm animal. And then I started feeding it and it would come to me, and it was named, we called it Gracie, and I've been feeding it and it got through the winter. I was amazed. And then suddenly somebody threw 2 more in because I don't know where these other 2 came from. They're enormous and I've been feeding them. And when those ducks see me anywhere on the property, they call to me. They know where to go because I feed them. And just recently, I recognize that even before, if I'm driving in my car and I'm turning up my driveway, they're already swimming down toward where I am without my even getting out of the car. I don't know whether they can see me that far away because they're far down the river, but as soon as they see any part of me, and I guess the car is a part of me, up they come and I greet them. I have a little stairway now down to the river and they know I'm going to feed them. So I know they love me because I'm going to feed them, but how did they hung enough that they see me, they hung, but how about that car? They were on their way when they saw the car. It's amazing.
I think, there's
That's awesome.
yeah.
And they bring a lot of joy. Let me tell you something. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm so happy to see them.
About the other one. Yeah. Ducks.
Beautiful animals.
Yeah, I don't want to get into my entire duck. I have ducks as pets also, so that's a whole other craziness of mine.
No, I think you, I mean, I think you find that intelligence isn't just a human quality, that there's nature, that there's sentience or
Yeah.
intelligence permeating nature, and you see it manifested in many different ways. So that's one of it. And yeah, they may sense you're coming when you're in town, picking up that big supply of bread for them. So, or food. But thanks for that question. Good one. Good story. I can picture it. Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you so much. For having me.
Thank you so much. Wonderful.
We'll skip this off. We'll skip this
Thank you.
for time. You know. Okay, so I'm gonna end the service with a second reading, and that is a poem by Wendell Berry, one of my favorite poets and writers. It's called The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. So, thank you, John. Thank you for a very wonderful talk. Really enjoyed it. And now and also I'll just mention John has some books for sale in the back. If he brought some in case you'd like to purchase a book. And I think Jill had two announcements.
Yeah, I just have a couple of announcements. First is, a few weeks ago when Beverly was here, there was a lot of talk about, or some talk about having a, a hoot nanny or song for protests and something like that. And a few of us were working on it. We hadn't found the location. Kathy Gary's in on it now, and she's got a couple of ideas, so we're still working on it. And so keep your ears open. We'll put it out on the network, and it's not gonna happen too fast because we need a location. It's too cold to be outside yet, so. We wanted just a gathering where people could come, where we have some artists come and, present protest songs that they have written, plus, sing-alongs to ones that we all know. So we're working on it, so keep your ears open for that. The other thing is a little bit on a personal level for me, Pat and Jim know I've had a concert series for many years at Cooperage, and we're back. My first show is next Sunday. And I want to just mention it a little bit. They're called the Bandits on the Run. And they're a lot of fun. These folks and they have openers, and how I wound up with these folks, and I'll pass this around.
Yeah.
They the lead singer of the Bandits on the Run and my friend Hunter Brown are both actors, musical theater. And I had gone to see Hunter. It was his Broadway debut in Swept Away in December, and it closed in December. The show was amazing. The voices are amazing. So the lead singer in the Bandits on the Run was one of the leads in this show. The music was incredible. His voice is wonderful. Learned afterwards, they have a trio. He has a trio. His wife plays the cello. The other woman plays an accordion. And they're just really interesting and beautiful voices. They share all the singing. And Hunter he sang at Forestburg. He was in many musical theater musicals at Forestburg over the years. I met him in 2014. And he and his girlfriend are opening the show. And that's next Sunday at 3:00 at the Cooperage in Homestead, if you're interested. Really interesting folks, very, very, very talented. So if you're not doing anything, next Sunday at 3:00 at the Cooperage, and I'm cooking.
Okay. Two bonuses. I also read something, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it was happening at Willow Wisp Farm. But it was a gathering of women who were going to sing songs of protest or something, or?
This is what, no, this was the start of what we were hoping to have it at Farm Arts, they can't do it.
Oh, okay.
Because of grants and that kind of thing, same, like, no political stuff at the Cooperage,
Right,
no
but
political
that's,
stuff.
we're
da, da, da.
working on that.
So we're working on the location, that's, as soon as we have a location, we have people wanting to be involved.
Yeah.
And Kathy Gary called me the other day and she said, I have a couple ideas, I've already started on one, working on it, so I'm gonna call her this afternoon and hopefully we'll get it together in, within the next month, is what we're hoping. So, yeah.
Great.
Okay, the what? Dude, I know, and, but they, they wanna hold on to what they've got,
So now we'll extinguish the chalice. Do we have something okay. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. So thank you all for coming, and I believe there's some refreshments in the back if you'd like to stay and chat or just have a cup of coffee and a piece of coconut bread. Slice it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming on Zoom. Good to see you.
Thank you so much. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, Sharon,
Kind of organized.
how are you?
Somebody calling me? Hi.
How are you? Are you
Good, how you
doing?
doing? How are your grown-up boys?
They're good. They're good.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's great. Good to see you, man.
How far, where are you now?
I'm in West Easton, Pennsylvania. Hour and a half away or something. Yeah.
I don't have you on my phone. If I don't have the right address, I'll text you.
Yeah, right.
Don't text me, but you can email me.
So-
Somebody has my information.
Yeah, no, I've seen it in the
I'll
union.
do it from you.
Better than.
Sounds good?
I can't hear you with all the other noise.
Tom as well? Tom's doing good? I saw-
Yes, he's over here reading, doing his crossword. You see his hands? He's
I did.
So who is interested in finding a sit spot here with me locally? I was hoping to get a group out walking maybe somewhere in that area. River?
Heading out.
I think it would be beautiful. A group here.
Here is a little hard to just swivel the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she, I don't know.
Okay, awesome. Well, go back there and, yeah, I mean, you don't have credit card or anything.